Think you know Chevy sleepers? Think again. These 30 undercover monsters packed serious muscle under unassuming sheet metal, big blocks, 4 speeds, and cop car specials that you've probably never heard of. From forgotten factory beasts to barely documented street terrors, these Chevrolets flew under the radar while packing serious heat. Stick around as we dive into the rarest, meanest, and most unknown sleeper Chevys ever built. Let's get into it. Starting the countdown at number 30 is the 1969 Chevrolet Brookwood 427 wagon. It looked like every other full-size family hauler of the era. Long, boxy, and built for road trips. But pop the hood, and you find the L79 427 cubic inch V8, the same fire-breathing big block found in the Corvette and Capo Chevelles. Rated at 425 horsepower, this grocery getter packs serious heat. Chevy never advertised the L79 option for the Brookwood, and dealers weren't exactly pushing customers toward a drag strip-ready wagon. You had to know what to ask for. As a result, only about 600 Brookwood 427s rolled off the line, blending into traffic while outrunning proper muscle cars. Backed by a 4-speed manual or a turbo 400 automatic, the Brookwood 427 was a brute. It could rip through the quarter mile in the mid-13s, quicker than a 396 Chevelle SS. Despite weighing over 4,000 pounds, it had the power to shove its occupants deep into the bench seats. Chevy offered a range of engines for the Brookwood, from mild 307s to big block 396s, but the L79 was on another level. It was pure muscle, hiding inside a no-frills wagon. The exterior was unremarkable, simple chrome trim, steel wheels, and zero badging to hint at what lay beneath. Inside, it was basic family transport, with vinyl seats and a column shifter, unless otherwise optioned. The Brookwood 427 was built for a select few, buyers who needed a wagon but wanted to smoke Camaros at stoplights. Today, surviving units are rare, and prices for a documented L79 Brookwood easily push past 6 figures. The Brookwood 427 may have looked like a kid hauler, but this sleeper was built to hunt. Next up at number 29, it's the 1977 Chevrolet Nova Concourse 305 5-speed. By 1977, the muscle car era was dead. Insurance hikes, fuel regulations, and emissions laws had strangled horsepower, leaving buyers with smog-choked V8s and sluggish automatics. But hidden among the uninspired offerings was the Chevrolet Nova Concourse 305 5-speed, an ultra-rare combo that gave this luxury trim Nova an unexpected edge. Chevy designed the Nova Concourse to compete with European-style personal coupes like the Mercury Monarch and Ford Granada. It had plusher trim, wood grain accents, and a more refined ride, far from its street racing roots. But for reasons unknown, Chevrolet quietly offered a factory 5-speed manual with a 305 cubic inch V8. This setup was unheard of in American cars of the time, making this Nova an oddball sleeper. The 305 V8 wasn't a barn burner, but paired with a 5-speed, it had a surprising amount of punch. With 145 horsepower and a lighter curb weight than larger V8 sedans, it moved better than most mid-70s Chevys. The real trick was the gearing. Where most GM cars were stuck with lazy 3-speed automatics, the Nova's 5-speed kept the revs in the sweet spot, making it feel quicker than it was. Most Novas of this era came with automatics or the occasional 3-speed manual, and nearly all performance options had been stripped from the lineup. That's why the Nova Concourse 305 5-speed slipped under the radar. It wasn't a muscle car, and Chevy never hyped it up. Few buyers even knew they could spec it this way, making it an unintentional sleeper. Today, finding a surviving Nova Concourse with this drivetrain is nearly impossible. Most were driven into the ground or converted to drag racers. But for those lucky enough to track one down, it's a quirky reminder that even in the darkest days of performance, there were still a few surprises hiding in plain sight. At number 28, we have the 1965 Chevrolet Chevelle 300 Deluxe Z16. In 1965, the Chevelle was still finding its place in Chevrolet's lineup. The SS models were gaining traction, but if you wanted real performance, you looked to a GTO or an Impala with a 409. Most people never gave the plain Jane Chevelle 300 Deluxe a second glance, and that's exactly what made the Z16 version one of the sneakiest muscle cars of its time. Only 200 were built, and Chevy didn't advertise them. This wasn't a dealership gimmick like the Capo cars. It was a factory experiment. A stripped-down, two-door Chevelle 300 Deluxe sedan stuffed with a 396 cubic inch L37 V8, putting out 375 horsepower. No flashy SS badges, no scoops, just raw power in a bare-bones package. A closed-ratio 4-speed manual came standard, sending power to a beefy 12-bolt rear. Chevy upgraded the frame, suspension, and brakes to handle the extra punch, but to the untrained eye, it was just another basic mid-size Chevy. It wasn't. The Z16 could rip through the quarter mile in the high 13s, keeping pace with big block Galaxies and 421-powered Pontiacs while looking like something your uncle used to haul tools. Inside, it was all business. No console, no fancy trim, just a speedometer that read to 160 miles per hour, a dead giveaway that this wasn't an ordinary Chevelle. Most were ordered in understated colors, further hiding the fact that this thing could outrun half the muscle cars on the street. The Z16 never got the recognition of the later SS396, and its limited production meant few people ever saw one, let alone knew what it was. Today, they're among the rarest Chevelles ever made, with values soaring past $250,000 for clean units. And at number 27, it's the 86 Chevrolet Celebrity Eurosport VR. By the 1980s, muscle cars were a fading memory, and front-wheel drive had taken over GM's lineup. Nobody looked at a Chevrolet Celebrity and thought performance, but the Eurosport VR package was a bizarre attempt to inject some excitement into an otherwise forgotten family sedan. Most people never even knew it existed. Chevrolet quietly built around 200 of these, and they weren't your average A-body grocery getters. Under the hood sat a 2.8-liter high-output V6, pushing out 135 horsepower. Not much on paper, but paired with a stiffer suspension, quicker steering, and a lightweight chassis, the Eurosport VR actually handled better than most American sedans of the era. What really set it apart was the styling. Chevy borrowed heavily from European sports sedans, adding aggressive ground effects, blackout trim, red badging, and special alloy wheels. It looked like a factory-built touring car, but since it was still a celebrity at heart, nobody took it seriously. The VR came with either a 5-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic, and while it wasn't lining up drag strips, it could hold its own in the corners, something unheard of for an 80s Chevy sedan. Against the Mustang GT or Camaro IROC Z, it didn't stand a chance in a straight line, but on a twisty back road, it was a different story. Chevrolet didn't advertise the Eurosport VR much, and dealers barely stocked them. By the time people realized what it was, production was done. Today, they are nearly extinct, with only a handful of survivors popping up in collector circles. It may not have been the fastest, but as far as forgotten sleepers go, the Eurosport VR is one of GM's strangest. Slotting in at number 26, it's the 1963 Chevrolet Bel Air 409. In the early 60s, everyone knew the Impala SS 409. It had the looks, the reputation, and the performance to back it up. But buried deep in Chevrolet's order sheets was an option that almost nobody checked. A full-size Bel Air sedan with the same fire-breathing 409 cubic inch V8. No SS badges, no sporty two-door styling, just an ordinary four-door with brutal, unadvertised speed. Only 153 were built, and most buyers had no idea they existed. The Impala SS got all the magazine covers, all the dealership promotion, and all the street cred. The Bel Air? It was the workhorse of the lineup. Taxis, family haulers, budget fleet cars. But for those who knew what they were doing, it was the ultimate sleeper. The dual quad 409 pushed out 425 horsepower, paired with a 4-speed manual and a heavy-duty posed traction rear end. It ran the quarter mile in the 13s, keeping up with the hottest muscle cars of the decade, all while looking like something your neighbor's dad drove to work. The lighter Bel Air body gave it a slight edge over the heavier Impala, but nobody noticed because nobody expected a 4-door to be quick. Inside, it was pure function. Bench seats, a basic dash, and zero flash. Nothing about this car screamed performance until it launched off the line. Since almost no one ordered them, the Bel Air 409 never got the recognition of the Impala SS twin. Most were used up, wrecked, or forgotten altogether. Few remain, and those that do are nearly mythical, a car built for those who wanted to go fast but didn't need anyone to know about it. At number 25, it's the 1973 Chevrolet Chevelle Laguna 454. The 73 Chevelle Laguna is mostly remembered for dominating NASCAR, but buried in the order sheets was a version nobody talks about. A handful of them came off the assembly line with a 454 cubic inch big block and a factory 4-speed manual. Just around 140 of these were built, making it one of the most overlooked GM sleepers of the decade. By 73, muscle cars were taking a hit from emissions regulations, insurance hikes, and new safety laws. The Laguna, meant to replace the Malibu SS, focused more on aerodynamics and handling rather than outright horsepower. It was the first Chevy to get urethane front bumpers, a sloped nose, and improved suspension geometry. Most rolled off the lot with small blocks or automatic transmissions, but for a lucky few buyers, Chevy still offered the LS 454 with a Muncie 4-speed, essentially stuffing big block Chevelle SS power into a car nobody suspected. The LS4 put out 275 net horsepower, but with massive torque on tap, it could still light up the rear tires at will. The manual transmission kept it from being another cushy boulevard cruiser, giving it real street cred at a time when most muscle cars were getting neutered. While Mopars and Mustangs from the late 60s still got all the attention, this Laguna quietly packed serious heat. The lack of flashy SS badging and the focus on handling instead of raw power meant almost nobody noticed these big block 4-speed Lagunas when they were new. Production was tiny and most buyers didn't even realize they could order one this way. Few remain, and with its NASCAR heritage and rarity, it's one of the most obscure big block Chevelles ever built. Number 24 is the 1964 Chevrolet Biscayne 409 sedan. It was a factory-built street brawler hiding in plain sight. Everyone remembers the Impala SS 409, but almost nobody knows Chevy quietly installed the same powerhouse into the bare-bones Biscayne. With just 125 built, it was never advertised, never given the super sport treatment, and never meant to be a collector's car. It was a fleet special, a family hauler, a cop car, not something muscle car fans paid attention to. That's why it remains virtually unknown. Under the hood sat the legendary 409 cubic inch V8, producing up to 425 horsepower with a solid lifter cam and dual 4-barrel carburetors. Paired with a Muncie 4-speed manual and a heavy-duty posed traction rear end, this unassuming sedan could leave plenty of so-called performance cars in the dust. It ran the quarter mile in the high 13s, serious speed for a full-size 4-door. But because it wasn't a flashy 2-door coupe, almost nobody noticed. On the outside, the Biscayne 409 looked like any other fleet car. Basic steel wheels, minimal chrome, and no badges hinting at its firepower. The interior was stripped down to rubber flooring, a simple speedometer, and a bench seat. The whole point of the Biscayne was affordability, not style. Most were bought for work duty, not preservation. They were driven hard, used up, and scrapped. Unlike the Impala SS, which enthusiasts cherished, these sleepers disappeared. Few even knew they existed in the first place. Today, finding a surviving Biscayne 409 is nearly impossible, and if one does surface, it's a rare piece of muscle car history. A true forgotten powerhouse, built for those who didn't care about looks, just speed. Moving into the 23rd position is the 1989 Caprice 9C1 Police Package 350. The 1989 Chevrolet Caprice 9C1 was already a well-respected police cruiser, but a handful, around 90 units, were outfitted with something special under the hood. While most Caprices ran standard issue small blocks, these rare units received the factory TBI 350, making them among the fastest pursuit sedans of their time. Almost nobody outside law enforcement knew these cars existed, and by the time they retired from service, most had been beaten into the ground. That's why they remain virtually unknown today. At a time when emissions regulations had strangled performance, the TBI 350 was a rare bright spot. With 190 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque, this Caprice had the most potent power plant available in a full-size GM sedan. It wasn't just about raw numbers. The added torque gave officers serious highway speed and off-the-line punch, making it ideal for high-speed chases. The 700R4 automatic transmission and heavy-duty suspension completed the package, making it faster and more durable than the average Caprice. On the outside, it looked like any other 9C1 cruiser. Boxy, unassuming, and built for function. No flashy trim, no performance badging. The interior was equally utilitarian, with a certified speedometer, heavy-duty bucket seats, and provisions for police equipment. Civilians never had access to this package, and once these cars were retired, most were auctioned off for next to nothing or sent to the scrapyard. Few collectors even knew this variant existed, and surviving examples are nearly impossible to find. Unlike performance cars of the era, they weren't preserved. They were used, abused, and discarded. That's why the 1989 Caprice 9C1 TBI 350 is one of the most overlooked sleepers GM ever built. At number 22, we have the 1975 Mazda 2+2 262 V8. The 75 Mazda 2+2 had the looks of a sporty compact, but hardly anyone remembers it could be optioned with a small block V8 and a 4-speed manual. That's because this configuration was extremely rare. Fewer than 100 are believed to have been built. While the Mazda nameplate is known for economy-minded 4-cylinder versions, this specific combination gave it genuine sleeper status. The 262 cubic inch V8 wasn't a powerhouse, producing just 110 horsepower, but it packed decent torque for a car that barely tipped the scales at 2,800 pounds. More importantly, the 4-speed manual transformed the driving experience, making it far more engaging than the sluggish automatic models. The combination of a lightweight chassis and rear-wheel drive meant it could hold its own against larger, heavier cars of the era. Designed as a response to tightening emissions regulations and rising fuel costs, the Mazda 2+2 was meant to be a stylish, fuel-efficient alternative to traditional muscle cars. Its sloped nose and fastback profile gave it a European-inspired look, but under the skin, it was still classic GM. The interior was relatively basic, with bucket seats, a floor shifter, and minimal luxury features. This was a driver's car, not a boulevard cruiser. Wondering why it was unheard of? The 262 V8 was a stopgap engine, only available in California due to emissions rules, and it was dropped entirely after 1976. Meanwhile, the Mazda's reputation became tied to its later, weaker engine options, burying this rare V8 variant in obscurity. Today, finding one with the 4-speed intact is nearly impossible, making it one of the rarest sleeper compacts GM ever built. Up next, at number 21, it's the 1984 Cavalier RS 2.8. Chevy Cavalier wasn't built for speed, and that's exactly why the 84 Cavalier RS 2.8 V6 with a factory 4-speed manual has slipped through the cracks. Most remember the Cavalier as a budget-friendly commuter car, not a performance machine. But for a brief moment, Chevrolet offered an RS version with a high-output 2.8-liter V6 and a manual transmission, creating a front-wheel drive sleeper that few even knew existed. The fuel-injected 2.8-liter V6 churned out 135 horsepower and 165 foot-pounds of torque. Strong numbers for a lightweight compact in the early 80s. While that wouldn't win drag races against V8 muscle, it gave the Cavalier an unexpected punch off the line. The 4-speed manual kept it lively, making it far quicker than the standard 4-cylinder models. With a curb weight under 2,600 pounds, it had a solid power-to-weight ratio, something no one expected from a Cavalier. At first glance, there was little to set the RS apart. A slightly more aggressive front fascia, unique badging, and subtle ground effects hinted at something sportier. But it still looked like a commuter car. Inside, it had basic bucket seats and a sportier steering wheel. But there were no flashy performance cues. This was a car meant to fly under the radar. The RS badge stuck around for years, but later versions were nothing more than appearance packages, erasing any memory of this early V6 manual sleeper. Most of these cars were driven into the ground, and unlike muscle cars of the past, nobody thought to save them. Number 20 is the 1971 Chevrolet Biscayne 402 Big Block. The Biscayne was never meant to be exciting. It was Chevrolet's cheapest full-size sedan, built for fleets, taxi services, and budget-conscious buyers. That's why the handful of 71 Biscaynes fitted with a 402 cubic inch big block have been almost entirely forgotten. Nobody expected serious power in a car that usually had a 6-cylinder or a small block V8. At its core, this was a bare-bones sedan, but under the hood, the 402 cubic inch V8 put down 300 horsepower and 400 foot-pounds of torque, giving it the muscle to move the heavy B-body with authority. Buyers could pair it with a 3-speed automatic or a 4-speed manual, making for an uncharacteristically quick full-size sedan. Most big block Chevrolets of the era had badges and trim to match their power, but the Biscayne stayed plain, making it a perfect street sleeper. From the outside, nothing gave away the 402 lurking under the hood. The Biscayne had basic hubcaps, simple body lines, and minimal chrome. Inside, it was all business: vinyl bench seats, rubber flooring, and no unnecessary extras. This was a working man's car, not a showpiece. Most people who ordered a big block Chevrolet in 1971 chose an Impala, Caprice, or Monte Carlo. The Biscayne was a stripped-down option, and the few that were built with the 402 were either run into the ground or forgotten scrapyards. With such low production numbers, these sleepers have nearly vanished, and even among Chevrolet collectors, they remain an obscure footnote in muscle car history. Coming in the number 19 position is the 85 Citation X11 2.8 HO V6. The Chevrolet Citation wasn't exactly a fan favorite. It was GM's first attempt at a front-wheel drive compact. And while it sold well early on, its reputation took a nosedive due to reliability problems. By 1985, it was on its way out, but hidden in the final model here was something special: the Citation X11, a performance version with a high-output 2.8-liter V6 and a factory 4-speed manual. Only about 50 were built that way, making it one of the rarest sleepers GM ever made. The X11 wasn't just a sticker package. The 2.8-liter HO V6 put out 135 horsepower and 165 foot-pounds of torque, which may not sound like much, but in a car weighing just over 2,600 pounds, it made a real difference. It could hit 0 to 60 in under 9 seconds, quick for a small car in the mid-80s. The factory sports suspension, quick ratio steering, and rear stabilizer bar gave it handling that was a step above other front-wheel drive Chevys of the time. The cowl induction hood was functional, channeling air into the intake for better performance. Despite its potential, the X11 never got much attention. The Citation name had already been dragged through the mud, and by 1985, Chevy wasn't promoting it anymore. Most buyers wanted fuel economy, not performance, and the handful of X11s built ended up scattered across the country, largely forgotten. Many were driven into the ground or rusted away, making survivors nearly impossible to find. It may not have been a fire-breathing muscle car, but for a front-wheel drive compact, the X11 had serious potential. With such low production numbers, it remains one of the most unknown performance Chevys of the era, one that barely anyone remembers even existed. At number 18, it's the '69 Townsman 427 wagon. The '69 Chevrolet Townsman was just another full-size station wagon in a sea of family haulers. It had the same long roof, wood delete panels, and bench seats as any other suburban grocery getter. But for a handful of buyers who knew their way around an order sheet, it could be transformed into something wild. With the optional L72 427 cubic inch big block under the hood, this unassuming wagon packed 425 horsepower, the same engine found in the Corvette and Capo Chevelles. Chevy built an estimated 50 of them, making it one of the rarest and least known muscle wagons of its time. Most Townsmans were built with small block V8s or inline sixes, making this version an absolute outlier. The L72 427 was a factory performance engine with 11-to-1 compression, a solid lifter cam, and a Holley 4-barrel carburetor. It was paired with either a 4-speed manual or turbo 400 automatic transmission, sending all that power to the rear wheels through a heavy-duty 12-bolt rear end. In a lighter car, this setup could run the quarter mile in the high 13s. In a nearly 4,500-pound wagon, it still had enough torque to surprise just about anything at a stoplight. Why is it virtually unknown? Simple. No one was looking for a big block Townsman. Chevy didn't advertise it, dealerships rarely stocked it, and it was overshadowed by the more popular Impala and Chevelle SS models. Most were likely bought by people who wanted to tow something heavy, not win drag races. Over time, they were used up and scrapped, leaving only a few survivors. With production numbers this low, finding one today is almost impossible. When they do surface, they command serious money because there's nothing quite like a factory-built 427 muscle car hiding in plain sight as a station wagon. Coming in at number 17, it's the 92 Lumina Euro 5-speed. By the early 90s, Chevrolet's Lumina was just another front-wheel drive sedan, built for rental fleets and family duty. But buried in the lineup was an oddity, a Lumina Euro with a factory 5-speed manual transmission. Only 30 to 50 were ever made, and most buyers never even knew it was an option. Most Luminas came with a 3-speed or 4-speed automatic, but Chevy quietly paired the Euro's 3.4-liter V6 with a get-rag-sourced 5-speed. It wasn't a powerhouse, making 140 horsepower, but the manual made a huge difference in how it drove. Instead of the sluggish, soft-shifting automatic, this setup let drivers push the V8 higher into the rev range, making the car far quicker off the line than its automatic counterpart. The Lumina Euro was positioned as the sporty alternative to the standard model, getting stiffer suspension, quicker steering, and a slightly more aggressive exterior with body-colored trim and unique wheels. But Chevy never marked the 5-speed version, leaving it to special orders and limited regional availability. It's not that buyers rejected it, it's that most never had the chance to choose it in the first place. By 95, the Lumina was redesigned, and the manual transmission disappeared entirely from the lineup. These cars were never collected, rarely preserved, and most ended up in junkyards after years of hard use. Finding one now is nearly impossible, and the few that survive go unnoticed. At a time when American sedans were ditching manuals, the Lumina Euro 5-speed was a complete outlier, an option that never had a chance. While it wasn't a high-performance machine, it was one of the last mid-size Chevys to let drivers shift for themselves, making it an unintentional sleeper lost to time. Next, at number 16, it's the 1970 Kingswood 454 LS5 wagon. The Kingswood wasn't supposed to be a performance machine. It was a massive station wagon built for long road trips, hauling kids, and towing boats. But for a handful of buyers in 1970, that wasn't enough. Chevrolet quietly offered the LS5 454 cubic inch big block as an option, and about 30 Kingswood wagons rolled off the line with it under the hood. These sleepers packed 360 horsepower and a brutal 500 foot-pounds of torque, turning a 4,500-pound family hauler into a serious street bruiser. Chevy never advertised the LS5 for the Kingswood, which is a big reason why hardly anyone knew it existed. The Chevelle SS 454 was stealing headlines, and muscle car buyers were looking at wagons. Insurance rates were also spiking, and a high horsepower wagon wasn't exactly an easy sell. Most Kingswood buyers stuck with small block V8s or the more common 400 cubic inch big block, leaving the LS5 variant deep in the shadows. Despite its muscle car heart, the Kingswood looked like every other full-size Chevy wagon. No special badges, no scoops, nothing flashy. Just a massive, road-hugging body with wood paneling and a tailgate. The only giveaway was the dual exhaust and the deep growl from the 454. It came standard with a turbo 400 automatic and a heavy-duty suspension, making it surprisingly capable for its size. It could run the quarter mile in around 14.5 seconds at nearly 98 miles per hour, making it as quick as some Chevelle SS models. Finding one today is nearly impossible. With only 30 built and most used up as family workhorses, few remain. If one surfaces, expect to see a hefty price tag. This was one of the most unexpected ways to get big block power in 1970. Coming in at number 15 is the 76 Malibu Classic 400. In a decade where muscle cars were fading fast, Chevrolet quietly slipped a handful of performance-oriented Malibus into the lineup. Just 30 or so Malibu Classic models left the factory equipped with a 400 cubic inch small block V8 and a 4-speed manual transmission, an unusual combination in an era dominated by automatic gearboxes. The 400 small block wasn't a high-revving powerhouse like the legendary LS6 454, but it delivered a solid 175 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque. While those numbers don't sound impressive, the 4-speed manual gave the car an edge over its automatic-equipped counterparts. With the ability to control shift points and keep the engine in its power band, the Malibu Classic 400 was quicker than most people would expect. While quarter-mile times are scarce, estimates suggest it could run in the mid-15-second range, respectable for a mid-70s sedan burdened by emissions restrictions. This version of the Malibu remained obscure for several reasons. First, Chevrolet never marketed it as a performance model, instead prioritizing luxury and comfort for the Malibu Classic lineup. Second, most buyers in 76 weren't looking for a manual transmission in a mid-size sedan, especially not one with a big cube small block. By this point, manuals were reserved for true muscle cars or compact economy models, making this a rare outlier. With such low production numbers, surviving units are nearly impossible to find. Many were likely driven hard and scrapped, while others were converted into automatic-equipped cruisers over the years. The few that remain are among the last factory-built Chevrolets of the era to offer a legitimate muscle car driving experience before emissions regulations and changing consumer tastes sealed the fate of higher performance, manually equipped sedans. At number 14, it's the 67 Caprice 396 4-door hardtop. The 67 Caprice was marketed as Chevrolet's top-tier full-size luxury model, positioned above the Impala with extra trim and a more refined interior. But hidden deep within the options list was something that seemed out of place for a car focused on comfort: Chevy's 396 cubic inch big block V8. While most buyers stuck with small blocks or the standard inline 6, a handful, estimated at 20 to 30, ordered their Caprice 4-door hardtops with the 396, turning them into unexpected street sleepers. This wasn't just a standard big block. The 396 came in multiple power levels, with the most potent version of the Caprice rated at 325 horsepower and 410 foot-pounds of torque. Despite the extra weight of the full-size platform, the torque-rich 396 gave the car surprising acceleration, pushing it through the quarter mile in the low 15-second range, on par with many muscle cars of the era. But with its quiet ride, wood grain dash, and cushy bench seats, the Caprice looked like anything but a performance machine. The reason this configuration is virtually unknown comes down to buyers' priorities. In '67, anyone looking for a big block Chevrolet performance sedan was more likely to buy an Impala SS or a Chevelle SS 396. The Caprice buyer, meanwhile, wanted comfort, not quarter-mile times. Chevrolet also didn't promote the 396 in the Caprice lineup, focusing instead on the model's luxury features. The few buyers who opted for the big block likely ordered it for highway passing power rather than outright speed, meaning most were driven as daily family sedans rather than preserved as performance cars. Tucked into the number 13 position is the '81 Monte Carlo Turbo. When people think of turbocharged GM cars from the early 80s, Buick's Grand National and Regal Turbo come to mind. Almost no one remembers that Chevrolet briefly offered a turbocharged Monte Carlo in 1981. This was GM's first attempt at bringing turbo technology to its rear-wheel drive personal luxury coupes, yet it disappeared as quickly as it arrived. The '81 Monte Carlo Turbo was powered by a 3.8-liter V6 with a single turbocharger, the same basic engine used in Buick's Turbo Regals. However, unlike Buick's more refined sequential fuel injection system that would come later, the Monte's turbo setup was carbureted and tuned for just 170 horsepower. That doesn't sound like much, but compared to the weak V8 options of the era, it was one of the strongest engines in the lineup. With its lightweight design, the Monte Carlo Turbo was capable of mid-16-second quarter-mile times, respectable for the smog-choked early 80s. The reason this car is almost entirely forgotten comes down to availability and perception. Chevy never fully committed to turbocharging the Monte Carlo, offering it only for the 1981 model year and in extremely limited numbers, roughly 20 to 25 units before the option was scrapped. Most buyers either stuck with the tried and true V8s or weren't convinced a turbo V6 belonged in a Monte Carlo. GM also didn't push the model in marketing, leaving it hidden in option lists rather than putting it front and center like Buick's turbocharged offerings. With so few built and no real recognition at the time, almost all of them disappeared over the years. Unlike the Grand National, which later became a legend, the Monte Carlo Turbo never had a second chance to make an impact, leaving it as one of Chevy's rarest performance cars. At number 12, it's the 1970 El Camino SS 402. The 1970 El Camino SS is well known among muscle car fans, especially when equipped with the LS6 454. However, there's one version that even the most dedicated enthusiasts rarely hear about: a small batch of SS 402 models equipped with a 3-speed manual transmission on the column. The 402 cubic inch big block, often mistakenly referred to as a 396, was officially rated at 330 horsepower with a 4-barrel carburetor. Most buyers opting for this engine paired it with a 4-speed manual or automatic, but a handful, estimated at around 20, were ordered with a column-shifted 3-speed manual. This setup was a throwback to the mid-60s when column-shifted transmissions were common. But by 1970, nearly all high-performance muscle cars had moved to floor-shifted 4-speeds or automatics. Performance was solid for the era. The big block torque helped launch the car hard off the line, and in stock form, the 402-powered El Camino SS could run the quarter mile in the high 14-second range. But the unusual transmission choice meant slower shifts and a truck-like driving experience, making it an oddball among muscle trucks. Wondering why the 70 El Camino SS was unheard of? For starters, the number produced was minuscule. Most muscle car buyers weren't interested in a big block El Camino with a column shifter in 1970. Second, Chevrolet didn't promote this configuration. It was simply an option hidden deep in the order sheets. Many who ended up with one likely didn't seek it out, but rather ended up with it based on dealer availability. Over the years, nearly all 70 El Camino SS models have disappeared, with some likely converted to floor shift setups. Unlike other 1970 SS models, which have become collector's items, the 3-speed El Camino SS 402 remains a ghost, forgotten even among hardcore Chevy fans. The number 11 position is the 1990 Corsica LTZ. The Corsica was one of GM's most forgettable economy sedans, built to shuttle commuters from point A to point B with no excitement. But in 1990, Chevrolet quietly built an LTZ version with a 5-speed manual transmission, one of the rarest performance-oriented Corsicas ever made. The LTZ trim was introduced as the Sporty Corsica, featuring a stiffer suspension, upgraded interior, and subtle aerodynamic tweaks. Most came with a 3-speed automatic, but Chevy offered a 5-speed manual with a 2.8-liter multi-port fuel injection V6. This was the same engine used in the Camaro and Beretta GT, producing 135 horsepower and 165 foot-pounds of torque. While that may not sound like much, the lighter weight of the Corsica combined with the manual gearbox made it surprisingly quick for its time. With a 5-speed, the LTZ could hit 60 miles per hour in around 8.5 seconds, quicker than many V6 sedans of the era. The short gearing and low curb weight made it feel more responsive than the automatic models, and the stiffer suspension gave it better handling than a standard Corsica. It was, in many ways, a budget sports sedan hiding in plain sight. Almost no one remembers this version because so few were built. The Corsica was never marketed as a performance car, and buyers looking for speed overlooked it entirely. Those who did want a sporty Chevrolet sedan in 1990 were far more likely to choose a Beretta or a Camaro. With only an estimated 15 to 20 LTZ 5-speeds ever made, they were never common to begin with. On top of that, these cars were daily drivers, not collectibles. Most ended up in scrapyards long before anyone realized their rarity. Finding one today is next to impossible, making it one of Chevrolet's most overlooked factory-built sleepers. Coming in at number 10, it's the 69 Bel Air 427 L72. The 1969 Bel Air was a bare-bones, full-size sedan built for practicality. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't marketed as a muscle car. But for a few select buyers, Chevrolet quietly installed the L72 427 cubic inch big block V8, the same engine found in the legendary Capo Camaros and Corvettes. With 425 horsepower and a factory 4-speed manual, this unsuspecting Bel Air was a straight-line missile that few ever knew existed. Unlike the stripped-down Biscayne, which had gained recognition for its L72 option, the Bel Air version flew under the radar. It offered slightly more interior amenities than the Biscayne, but was still far from luxurious. Most buyers looking for big block power went for the SS-badged Impalas or Chevelles, leaving the Bel Air largely ignored. The result? Fewer than 15 were ever built with this configuration. Performance was nothing short of brutal. The L72 427 was factory rated at 425 horsepower, but real-world dyno tests suggest the actual figure was much higher. Mated with the Muncie 4-speed manual or the 4.1 or 4.56 rear gear, the full-size sedan was capable of mid to high 13-second quarter-mile runs, matching or even beating many muscle cars of the era. While its unassuming exterior and lack of SS badging, it was the ultimate sleeper. The rarity of the 69 Bel Air L72 4-speed is what makes it so unknown today. Chevrolet didn't actively promote it, and only the most die-hard enthusiasts special order them. Many were used hard on the streets or the drag strip and disappeared over time. Few remain, making it one of the rarest and most overlooked big block Chevys ever built. Next, at number 9, it's the 1980 Malibu M80. Most people have never heard of the Malibu M80, and there's good reason for that. It was only sold in North Carolina, and barely any were built. Chevy cooked up this special edition as a nod to its NASCAR fans. But they never made a big deal about it, and hardly anyone bought one. At a glance, it looked like any other late 70s Malibu, but there were some key differences. It came in white with blue stripes running down the sides, mimicking the look of a stock car. The front air dam and rear deck spoiler weren't just for show. They were meant to give the car a more aggressive stance. Inside, it was still a basic Malibu, with bench seats and column shifters being the norm. Under the hood, things were a little disappointing. Instead of a high horsepower small block, Chevy dropped in a 305 cubic inch V8, rated at a modest 140 horsepower. No 350, no big block, no wild camshaft, just a standard emissions era small block. It wasn't going to break any records, but with a curb weight under 3,500 pounds, it still had enough grunt to be fun on the highway. The biggest reason nobody remembers the M80? Chevy never really pushed it. It wasn't listed as an official package in brochures, and since it was only available at certain dealerships in North Carolina, most buyers never even knew it existed. Production numbers are unknown, but estimates suggest only a handful were built before the idea fizzled out. It may not have been a fire-breathing muscle car, but the M80 is one of the rarest G-bodies out there, a factory-built NASCAR tribute that never got its time in the spotlight. Coming in at number 8, it's the 73 Caprice 454. A big, plush, full-size Chevy with a 4-speed manual? Sounds like a mistake on the order form. But in 1973, a few Caprices rolled off the line packing the 454 cubic inch big block and a factory stick shift. These cars shouldn't exist, but somehow a handful slipped through the cracks. By the early 70s, the muscle car era was fading, and full-size Chevys were being built for comfort, not quarter-mile glory. The Caprice was the top-of-the-line model, loaded with wood-grain trim, plush seats, and enough sound insulation to make it whisper quiet on the highway. The last thing anyone expected was a fire-breathing big block paired with a 4-speed. The 454 under the hood was the LS4 version, making 275 net horsepower, down from the pre-72 gross ratings, but with plenty of torque to get this nearly 4,500-pound beast moving. The fact that the 73 Caprice 454 was mated with a 4-speed manual is what makes it truly bizarre. Manuals were still somewhat common in Chevys at the time, but almost never in full-size luxury models like the Caprice. So why is the 73 Caprice 454 car nearly forgotten? Because almost nobody ordered one. By 1973, anyone looking for speed was buying Camaros, Chevelles, or Corvettes, not a land yacht with an extra pedal. Finding a 73 Caprice 454 today is next to impossible. Most Caprices from this era lived their lives as daily drivers, and even the rare performance variants were likely scrapped or forgotten. But if one of these unicorns ever shows up, it's one of the weirdest and rarest sleeper builds Chevy ever put together. An old school muscle car hiding in a luxury cruiser's body. At number 7, it's the 1978 Impala 9C1 350. In the late 70s, the Chevrolet Impala was known as a spacious full-size sedan, commonly found in suburban driveways and patrolling city streets as a police cruiser. But hidden among the standard-issue squad cars was an outlier. The 1978 Impala 9C1 with a 350 small block and a factory 4-speed manual. Most 78 Impalas, including law enforcement models, were equipped with automatic transmissions, making this stick shift version almost mythical. Built strictly for police use, the 9C1 package upgraded the Impala with a heavy-duty suspension, reinforced frame, upgraded cooling, and a more aggressive rear gear ratio. The 350 cubic inch V8 wasn't earth-shattering in stock form, but with a manual transmission, it gave officers complete control over power delivery, making it one of the last true driver's cars in the full-size police segment. The reason this version of the 78 Impala is practically unknown comes down to numbers. While Chevrolet cranked out thousands of automatic equipped 9C1s, only a rumored handful, some say less than 10, were ordered with a 4-speed. Since these cars lived hard lives in active duty, most were retired, stripped for parts, or outright crushed. Finding one today is nearly impossible. Performance-wise, the 350 4-speed combo made the 1978 Impala 9C1 a legitimate sleeper. It could pull hard off the line compared to its automatic-equipped counterparts. And with the right gearing, it was no slouch in highway chases. While it wasn't a high-horsepower monster like the muscle-era pursuit cars, it was a rare throwback to days when police interceptors had manual gearboxes and real driver involvement. In the world of forgotten police cruisers, the 78 Impala 9C1 4-speed stands out as a near-extinct piece of law enforcement muscle history. In the number 6 position, it's the 1966 Chevy II Nova wagon. The 66 Chevy II Nova wagon was never supposed to be fast. It was a basic, no-nonsense grocery getter meant for hauling kids and cargo. But a handful of buyers figured out a way to turn this lightweight wagon into a real street weapon. By checking the right boxes, they could order it with the L79 327 cubic inch V8, a high-revving small block that put out 350 horsepower. This was the same engine found in the Corvette and the Nova SS, but stuffing it into a station wagon made for one of the sneakiest factory sleepers of the era. The L79 was a beast, with a forged crank, high-lift cam, and a big Holley carb sitting on an aluminum intake. It screamed at 6,000 RPM and pushed this lightweight Chevy II deep into muscle car territory. Very few people knew about it because Chevy never advertised it, and most buyers overlook wagons when shopping for performance models. Most buyers looking for speed went straight for the coupe or hardtop, leaving the wagon option overlooked. Exact production numbers are hard to pin down, but estimates suggest only around 10 were ever built with the L79 package. That makes this one of the rarest muscle wagons ever to leave a Chevrolet factory. Performance was wild for something that looked like a family hauler. The L79 powered Nova SS could run the quarter mile in the high 14s right off the showroom floor. In a wagon with a bit of tuning, similar times were possible, meaning it could embarrass bigger, heavier big block cars at stoplights. Most of the 66 Chevy II Nova wagons were driven hard, and finding one today is nearly impossible. The few survivors are now ultra valuable, a testament to one of the strangest, most overlooked muscle cars Chevy ever built. Rolling into the number 5 slot, it's the 65 Bel Air 409. The 65 Bel Air wasn't built to turn heads. It was the working man's full-size Chevy, a no-nonsense sedan without the flash of an Impala. But for a handful of buyers, Chevy stuffed a 409 cubic inch V8 under the hood and paired it with a 4-speed manual, turning this unassuming Bel Air into a true street sleeper. Most muscle fans remember the 409 and the Impala SS, but the Bel Air 409 flew under the radar. It had the same engine choices, 340 horsepower with a single 4-barrel, or a 400 horsepower dual quad setup. With the Muncie 4-speed and the right gearing, a well-driven 65 Bel Air 409 could rip through the quarter mile in the low 14s, hanging with mid-60s GTOs and Fairlanes. Few people know about these cars today because hardly anyone ordered one. Buyers wanting big block power usually pick the Impala SS, leaving the Bel Air 409 as a rare anomaly. On top of that, 1965 was the final full production year for the 409 before it was replaced by the more advanced 396 and 427 big blocks. The 65 Bel Air was already overshadowed in Chevy's lineup, and with the 409 on its way out, these cars were quickly forgotten. For collectors, an original 1965 Chevrolet Bel Air 409 4-speed is a unicorn. It has all the muscle of an Impala SS, but with a stealth factor no factory hot rod could match. Few were built, even fewer survive, and those that do are among the last sleeper 409s ever built. Sliding into the 4th position is the 1977 Monte Carlo 454. Come 1977, the muscle car era was dead, at least on paper. The big block 454 was officially gone from the Monte Carlo option sheet, and 4-speed manuals were practically extinct in full-size Chevys. A few 77 Monte Carlos defied the norm, leaving the factory with a 454 cubic inch V8 and a 4-speed manual, an unlisted combination that made them among the last big block beasts of the era. The standard Monte Carlo that year was all about style, not speed. Most rolled off the line with small block V8s and automatic transmissions, built for comfort rather than quarter-mile runs. But for reasons lost to history, a few buyers, or possibly even factory insiders, found a way to order the 454 and Muncie 4-speed combo. This setup transformed the 77 Monte Carlo into a highway bruiser, packing around 240 net horsepower and enough torque to roast the rear tires with a simple clutch drop. So why is this car virtually unknown today? Chevrolet never officially listed the 454 or 4-speed as available options for the 77 Monte Carlo, meaning these cars weren't advertised, promoted, or even acknowledged by the factory. Most buyers in the late 70s weren't looking for big power anyway. Skyrocketing insurance rates and emissions restrictions had killed demand. The few who ended up with one likely drove them hard and left them for dead, making survivors nearly impossible to find. If one of these 454 4-speed Montes turns up today, it's a genuine piece of muscle car history. At number 3, we have the 83 Malibu 9C1 305. The 1983 Chevrolet Malibu 9C1 wasn't just another fleet sedan. It was built for law enforcement, packing serious upgrades over the civilian model. While most came with an automatic, a select few were fitted with a 4-speed manual and a 305 cubic inch small block V8, making them a true oddity in the police car world. At first glance, the 83 Malibu was just another squared-off, unassuming sedan, but the 9C1 package turned it into a sleeper. It had a heavy-duty suspension, reinforced frame, upgraded cooling, and a powertrain tweaked for pursuit duty. With a manual transmission, it had quicker throttle response and a level of driver control that automatic-equipped squad cars couldn't match. Very few people even knew this version existed. By the early 80s, manual transmissions in police cars were nearly extinct. Departments wanted easy, uniform training across their fleets, and automatics had become the standard. Almost no agencies ordered the stick shift, making this configuration incredibly rare. Adding to the scarcity, police cars were used hard. Long hours, high miles, and relentless abuse meant most were retired and scrapped, without a second thought. Finding a surviving 4-speed 83 Malibu 9C1 today is almost impossible. It wasn't built to be a collectible, but in hindsight, it's one of Chevy's most unusual sleepers, a cop car that could actually row through the gears. Coming in at number 2 is the 66 Chevrolet Caprice 427. The 66 Chevrolet Caprice wasn't marketed as a muscle car. It was Chevy's answer to full-size luxury, positioned above the Impala with extra trim, a plush interior, and a smooth ride. But a few buyers ignored the luxury angle and checked the right boxes, ordering the Caprice with a factory 427 cubic inch big block and a 4-speed manual. This wasn't just any 427. It was a high-performance L79 version, rated at 425 horsepower and built for serious speed. The big Caprice was already a sleeper, but with a 4-speed, it became a highway brute, capable of embarrassing smaller muscle cars. This setup turned a quiet executive's cruiser into a full-size street brawler, Hardly anyone knew about it because the Caprice was seen as a luxury car, not a platform for high-performance muscle. Most Caprice buyers wanted comfort, not quarter-mile capability. Few even realized that this combination was an option, and even fewer ordered it. Estimates suggest only about 5 were built, making it one of the rarest big block Chevys ever. Survivors are nearly non-existent. Many were likely used up, swapped, or simply overlooked in favor of more famous muscle cars. But for those lucky enough to find one today, the 66 Caprice 427 4-speed is one of the ultimate sleepers, disguised as a luxury car but built for raw speed. And finally, the number one unknown Chevy sleeper is the 67 Biscayne L79 327. The 67 Chevrolet Biscayne was the definition of a bare-bones, no-nonsense full-size Chevy. It was the kind of car you'd expect to see in fleet service or parked in a working-class driveway, not tearing up the streets. But Chevy offered a sleeper combo that turned this budget-friendly sedan into a serious threat. The L79 327 cubic inch small block V8. The L79 wasn't just another 327. This high-performance small block cranked out 325 horsepower thanks to a high-lift hydraulic cam, high-compression pistons, and a Holley carb. It revved hard, pulled strong, and made the Biscayne way quicker than anyone would have guessed. Most L79 equipped Chevys were Novas or Chevelles, but a select few found their way into a full-size Biscayne. Chevrolet only built 6 Biscaynes with this setup, making them one of the rarest sleeper Chevys of the era. What kept the 67 Biscayne L79 under the radar? For one, it was overshadowed by Chevy's big block monsters. Muscle car buyers in 67 were drawn to the 396 and 427 options, leaving the high-winding 327 overlooked. Plus, the Biscayne wasn't exactly a performance model. Most buyers looking for speed went for the Impala SS or Chevelle SS, not a base model sedan. But for those who knew the secret had a weapon. With a 4-speed manual and minimal options weighing it down, the 67 Biscayne L79 was a true street sleeper. No flashy badges, no stripes, just an unassuming full-size Chevy that could embarrass bigger, heavier cars off the line. Today, with only 6 ever built, finding one is nearly impossible, and when a 67 Biscayne L79 surfaces, it's proof that some of the best muscle cars were the ones nobody saw coming. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Chevy's rarest sleeper cars, hit that like button and drop a comment with your favorite hidden gem. And if you love discovering forgotten muscle, make sure to subscribe for more rare, high-performance classics you won't hear about anywhere else.